is Lady Boulay, and welcome back to Black American Lineage. Thank you for your support, for subscribing, and especially thank you for your comments. Today we're talking about Reconstruction. It was a hopeful time for Black Americans, but even during Reconstruction, when they were really out of slavery, they didn't even hate white people for those hundreds of years of slavery. They were just filled with hope and aspirations, really. And they started building and really started trying to construct a life for themselves. But in the background, the former enslavers were still trying to find ways to re-enslave them, because please remember, they were depending on black people for their livelihood, for the economy, and for taking care of them. So it really was not them taking care of black people as they would like to say. It was really the other way around. In 1866, the Civil Rights Bill became America's first civil rights legislation. 1866. The bill mandated that all male persons born in the United States, except for American Indians, regardless of their race or color or previous condition of slavery or involuntary servitude, were declared to be citizens of the United States in every state and territory. The bill granted all citizens the full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings for the security of person and property. So this is the first civil rights bill that was passed in the United States, granting the formerly enslaved people full citizenship and full protection under the law. The year before, in 1865, Congress, at the recommendation of President Abraham Lincoln, enacted the Freedmen's Bureau Act, creating a U.S. government agency to oversee the end of slavery in the South by providing food, clothing, fuel, and temporary housing to newly freed enslaved persons and their families. So the government was trying to give them a start to get on their feet after coming out of a system where they owned nothing and they had nothing. During the Civil War, Union forces had confiscated vast areas of farmland owned by Southern plantation owners, known as the 40 acres and a mule provision. Part of Lincoln's Freedmen's Bureau Act authorized the Bureau to rent or sell land to formerly enslaved persons. However, in the summer of 1865, President Johnson ordered all of this federally controlled land to be returned to its former white owners. Now lacking land, most formerly enslaved persons were forced to return to working on the same plantations where they had toiled for many generations. Okay, so this is what happened. The government under Lincoln had given them land and was going to provide the mule, the 40 acres and the mule, but Lincoln was assassinated, and see, that was an executive order. So when the new president came in, Andrew Johnson, he just repealed it all and gave the land back to the white owners, the people who had owned it before, and provided the enslaved people with nothing. Reconstruction lasted from 1865 to 1877. This was a time when black people were very hopeful. The formerly enslaved people were very hopeful that they were going to be able to find a home, build lives here in the United States of America. But their former slave masters didn't want that. They did not want those black people living among them free and working for themselves. They wanted those people back enslaved. So the government had to send federal troops into the southern states that had held slaves to protect the rights and the body, the physical bodies of the enslaved people. Now, the white Southerners were very angry about that because there was no way that they could rebuild their plantation life. They could not rebuild the South without the help of those black people. Now, the black people going on about their business. They were building their homes and churches and colleges and businesses, buying property because the government had opened up opportunities for black people to buy property. And some black people in the South have property in their families to this day that was bought during Reconstruction in the United States. Now, a lot of people don't know that because they just think, well, black people were complete failures during Reconstruction. That is not true. They bought land during that time, and they built businesses during that time. But in the background were those angry white people who really, they didn't know what to do with themselves because the black people had done all the work. They never stopped plotting to re-enslave the black people. But for 12 years, from 1865 to 1877, black people got a break from slavery and the brutality and the aggravation of having white people standing over them day and night, telling them what they could and could not do. And they made those 12 years count for something. They got married. They were very close-knit, and they valued family above all else. We all know the stories of people coming out of the enslaved system, walking for weeks, days, months, sometimes years, looking for their family members. But they got married. They started building families, homes, and communities. Many of the towns and communities that they built during that time have been taken through the law of eminent domain or just destroyed. For instance, Sugarland, Maryland, that community was taken over by wealthy developers. Now it's an exclusive area for wealthy white people. Seneca Village in New York City was taken and became a part of Central Park. But they built homes and communities. That's what's important. But those homes and communities were destroyed. This is the period where the black church grew as a foundational institution in the black community. Richard Allen and Absalom Jones had founded the African Methodist Episcopal Church in Philadelphia in 1816. But coming out of slavery, the enslaved people had to now establish their religious organizations and churches. HBCU colleges were also established during this time. Rust College in Holly Springs, Mississippi was established in 1866, which is the oldest HBCU college in the South. I don't know about the United States, but I know it's the oldest in the South. Howard University in Washington, D.C. was founded in 1867, and my own alma mater, Alabama State University, was founded in 1867 in Montgomery, Alabama. So they hit the ground running after slavery. I want to really establish that. They were setting the civilization in place. All of the components of a civilization they set in place during Reconstruction. In this picture, it looks like they're in a classroom, and you can see young and old alike are learning how to read and write. So they understood the importance of reading and writing in 1866. Black inventors made their mark during Reconstruction. They had already begun inventing during slavery, but they couldn't get patents for their work because they were not American citizens. So after slavery ended and they became citizens, they could get patents. Lewis Latimer got his first patent in 1874 for improvement in water closets in railroad cars, bathrooms. And Granville T. Woods got his first patent in 1869 for improvement to steam power brake device, and this had to do with the locomotive, the train. Whenever we talk about Reconstruction, this picture always comes up. These are the first black members of Congress. And so the emphasis is usually on them, making it seem like it's really important to have these black people in Congress. I'm not going to say that it wasn't important. What I'm going to say is that it wasn't the most important. And from the day they set foot in the United States House of Representatives, there was always a plot to try to get rid of them. They succeeded in 1923, I think, that the last black congressman was voted out. But the last one stood up in the hall of Congress and gave a speech, and he ended by saying, "We will be back." And they are back in large numbers. Reconstruction was also the time when different genres of music were being created. The spirituals are always the background and the foundation of Black American music. And from that, they began with the blues, and then jazz, and then ragtime, and so forth and so on. So this was a very productive time in the history of black people in America. A very productive time. Even though in the background there was brutality and violence and people determined to put them back into slavery so that the same people who benefited from them before could continue benefiting from them. But this was a very good time. It's a wonderful history, and it's one that we should know about. We need to know about so we will understand who we are for real as a group of people in the United States of America. In my next video, I'm going to talk about the end of Reconstruction. But this was a wonderful time in our history, and we owe our ancestors credit for trying, for faith, hope, and charity. They had all of that. We owe them a debt of gratitude because they showed what was possible for us during that horrendous time. So we are just now building on the foundation that they laid. They laid a wonderful foundation. They left a legacy for us that we can be proud of. And that is why during Black History Month in particular, we need to learn about the greatness of the people that we come from. Okay, y'all. Thank you for listening. Give me some comments if you will, and have a wonderful day.